So I want to go to Ric Grenell, our senior advisor for foreign policy and national security. So, Rick, right off the bat, it just seems like at a time there's a lot of turmoil in the world. I know that they're not happy about this OPEC move, and that speaks a lot to how they view the Biden administration, and then, of course, then how you view the United States. But the first point I'd say is we put ourselves in this situation where they could even have this kind of power over the United States to say we're going to cut 2,000 barrels a day, and that could send us into massive inflation in gas prices.
Yeah, the thing that I would say is the Biden administration put us into this dilemma. They're the ones who picked the fight with the Saudis in the beginning. Remember, too, that the Senate Democrats have made strategic mistakes over the last 2 years. They dropped the sanctions, the Trump sanctions, on the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, the Russian pipeline. When the Senate Democrats dropped the sanctions, they said this was the better path. This was a better policy because we didn't want to stick it in the eye of Russia. And that caused a war in Ukraine. Remember, too, the Senate Democrats worked with the Biden administration to remove the Houthis from the terrorist watch list. And what happened? We immediately saw a war where the Houthis were shooting missiles at the UAE. So now we have Senate Democrats coming forward and saying, block our relationship with the Saudis. This is yet another example of their strategic blunders. We should absolutely not do this, and we should absolutely not follow the path of the disastrous ideas that the Senate Democrats have put forward. They've caused a war in Ukraine, for God's sake.
And it seems to me, Rick, I mean, it's kind of easy, I think, to Americans if you could demonize the Saudi Arabian, the kingdom, the family, and all these different aspects. But I think when you actually learn about how involved we are there with military bases, with shared military equipment, when it comes to like global and international issues or regional issues in the Middle East, they're a very close partner. Is it a stretch to say that they'd be the closest major military partner after Israel in the region?
Well, look, they're one of the partners that we absolutely need to work on. And let me be very blunt. After the Khashoggi incident, we absolutely pushed the Saudis and punished the Saudis in the Trump administration and made sure that they understood that this was a terrible mistake that was going to greatly impact our relations. We improved on that. I think that there was a huge improvement, and we were trying to set a new course in our relationship. And then the Biden team came in, and Avril Haines, who is the director of national intelligence, repackaged the entire portfolio on Khashoggi and released it like it was new information. It wasn't new information. It was a strategic way for them, the Biden team, to message to the Iranians that they were going to beat up on the Saudis because they wanted to have new negotiations with Iran. Meanwhile, we're seeing Iran get worse with human rights abuses, and this Biden team continues to negotiate with them on a nuclear deal. This is yet another blunder in the Middle East by the Biden team and Senate Democrats. We should absolutely do the opposite of what they're saying.
Yeah, to me, I would say that after this OPEC move, it would be with an ally like this who does have a lot. They rely on the U.S. for a lot for security, and for the equipment they use, their military equipment, and it's not exactly just a two-way street there. But instead of trying to rebuild that relationship, whether it's behind the scenes, strategically, uniting around the common enemy in Iran, instead it's playing this out publicly. It's just another issue, I think, where the American people go, are we going to have another disaster? This is like, how many on the list can we handle at a time when, it doesn't say like this is the best administration to be balancing all these at the same time.
Look, we see a history from the Biden administration of weaponizing government against their political enemies. And this is yet another example. We've seen them weaponize the DOJ. We've seen them weaponize the FBI, the IRS. When they don't like someone, they use the tools of government to go after them. So now what's happened is they begged the Saudis for an OPEC deal. The Saudis said no. And what do? They throw a tantrum and they say, well, now we're going to completely freeze everything because we didn't get our way. They're weaponizing diplomacy now And this is just a childish behavior. Again, the Senate Democrats dropped the sanctions on the Russian pipeline, the Trump sanctions on the Russian pipeline. They dropped them. And what happened? We saw a war in Ukraine.
If we were energy independent, one, this decision wouldn't have been the same kind of impact. But second, I feel like that also would gives us more leverage over countries like Saudi Arabia, who ultimately are looking down the road to say they got to figure out a post-oil economic structure too for them. And yet, when we become so dependent on the world, I mean, we send so many mixed signals, Rick. It's like we're going to Venezuela to Chevron's going back in there, and we're lifting sanctions on them while at the same time we're punishing, and they're allied with Iran, and then we're punishing the Saudis because we don't like their OPEC decision. We're putting them in saying that they are Putin. And to me, it appears like what you said. These are self-inflicted blunders. I mean, this didn't have to happen this way.
For sure. When you look at the policies of President Trump and getting us off Middle East oil, he was very successful in telling the Middle East, we don't need your oil. We're going to be energy independent, and we're going to be an energy exporter. That went over like a lead balloon in the Middle East because they love the leverage that they used to get from being able to put one over on the United States with gas prices. President Trump completely changed that. Joe Biden put us back into that. He made us beholden to Middle East oil again by canceling the XL pipeline, by making sure that we're not energy independent, by drilling and making our own energy and producing our own energy. And so now what we see is we're back to the old ways where we have to beg the Middle East leaders for some sort of gift, and they're saying they don't want to give us the gift. So we're back to putting ourselves into this leverage again. We got to get out of it.
Yeah, Rick, we're going to follow this closely because I think this is one. We need to educate people about it, the relationship, the strategic relationship, the importance. Because the other side, they quickly try to demonize. They'll start bringing up 9/11 again when it fits their narrative that they're trying to blame someone else for where we are on gas prices. Rick, as always, we appreciate your insight on Secular. Rick, of course, part of the ACLJ team.